Hi everyone, welcome to my happy spot. Next week I will be doing a tutorial on a woven border, and because I felt it wasn't worth doing all that work with nowhere to put it, I decided that this week we could make this little center or something similar. So I'm inviting you to join me this morning as we have a little bit of fun. I've got a piece of fabric here that it must be 100% cotton. It's a very slight cream color, and I want to add color to it. So what I do is I'm going to wet the fabric, but I like to wet it on a flat surface so that no creases happen. So let's do that first. Give it a quick and please just remember it does need to be 100% cotton. I do color a lot of my fabrics, and as I go along, if any new techniques come up that I use, I will certainly share them with you. What I've done here, I've got fabric paint very slightly diluted, like almost very little water in there, and just to make them easier to spread. I'm a very hands-on person, so I don't wear gloves. I really can't do what I want to do with gloves on, but obviously if you want to, you may. In fact, I've got two friends, Maris and Antoinette, and they probably would be squealing by now. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dollop some on there and use my hands and spread it in. Maybe some green there. Get any bits off, any bits of fluff, get them off, because if they stay on, they will cause a fleck. Isn't that fun? Let's get that bit off. Love it. Next color, I think let's use a bit of that. Squeeze some on. Maybe there. Maybe there. Rub it in. When I do a background like this, obviously sometimes you want to use really particular colors, but if you don't, a very successful combination would be using warm and cold colors together. They somehow just play sharp well against each other. Right, take that off there, and I've got an old rag here. Get it off. Next bit. Let's see what happens if I add some blue in there. There we go. Now when you get something like that happening, where perhaps a blob happens and you just keep rubbing and it will disappear. Just keep rubbing and maybe add a little bit more in, and it will certainly, you can get it to move. Right, how wonderful is that? I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. I'm a school teacher who has spent many years teaching preschool children. So it's obviously, I picked up something. Oops, never mind. Nothing your cloth can't clean up. And there we go. Okay, background done. And what I do next is I just go and put it outside to dry while I prepare my other pieces of fabric. This is a piece of fabric I dyed yesterday. The colors are very soft. I wanted them soft. Just a word of warning, I used a piece of plastic that had been folded in half, and when I opened it up, it obviously, the crease was still there, and when I used it, it doesn't bother me. It's going to be covered up, but sometimes it may be a problem. So that line going across there was actually caused by a crease in the plastic. The fabric I used was a bit thin, so I decided to add a interfacing on it. It's a medium weight, I would say, and I think one needs that firmness for the stitching. So I've ironed a piece of that interfacing on the back of this piece of fabric. My next decision was, I knew I wanted to make a vase with some flowers in, but I had a few options as to which techniques I could use. I decided to be to be very specific about what I was doing, I guess. So the first thing I did, I needed a vase, and I decided on my measurements, which needed to be 3 across there, 5 inches across there, and 7 inches down. Took a piece of paper, folded it in half, and measured 1.5 inches, 7 inches up, and 2.5 inches, because we've got half of the vase here, and cut out, opened up. There was my size, my vase, right? I then, when I say more specific, I drew all these on the back of iron-on fusible web. So I didn't just free cut, I specifically drew them. But the only one I really drew a pattern for was that flower. I knew I wanted that floppy daisy. So there it is. I drew it, and because everything gets reversed when you use fusible web, as you know, I turned it over and I could see the black from the black pen showing through, and I just redrew it on this side. Numbered my pieces to help me with the placing, and this was the only actual pattern that I made. So obviously I put my, let me straight across there, I put that on top and drew off each petal. Obviously, to save my fusible web, I would maybe squeeze that one in there and draw it. It was number 8, mark it number 8, fit the next one in maybe there, mark it number 1, and so I went and I put them all on my, I drew them all on a piece of fusible web, which I ironed onto the back of this particular fabric. So that was the only one I specifically used a pattern for. The others I drew just very simple shapes. I mean, I know that this one I drew 5 of those, and all it was and you can change them by even with the cutting. It's a guide. I just wanted a guide for when I cut them out. Leaves, you often don't need to. Leaves you could just cut freehand. You could actually have your fabric ready on a piece of green fabric, And you can either draw, if you perhaps want a more shaped one, but often you can just take your scissors and really just cut the leaf shapes. Vary the sizes and vary the fabrics. It's so much more interesting. It wouldn't have looked as good if I'd used just one particular green fabric in here. I varied the green fabrics. Another hint for these stems, what I did was I didn't know beforehand how I was going to place them. That was the whole idea. I knew I wanted that flower in, but I did not know how I was going to place anything else. So if you, on your green, let me take that away. If on your green you draw curved shapes like that, and it helps to have very long ones. I'm just showing you on here. I hope this next bit makes sense to you. When you cut out the stems, you've got a stem which when you reverse it will be pointing that way. But if you swing the whole stem around, perhaps I can show you. I've got a little bit here. There we go. It goes that way, right? But if you swing it around, it goes that way. So it's helpful to just cut a whole lot of stems, some curved, some straight, and just have them there, and you can select them as you feel you need a particular one. So that's really what I did on the daisies. Just did that. Don't be afraid of drawing. You know, as a preschool teacher, I can tell you, you learn to draw before you learn to write. And people are so afraid of drawing. And really, once you get over the fear, it's really, really very easy. I'm not talking about great works of art. I certainly couldn't draw great works of art, but I can draw these daisy shapes and leaves and whatever, and so can you. What I then did was I selected my vase fabric and ironed my fusible web on the back, placed it where I wanted it to be. Slightly off center, that's where I wanted it to be. And when I ironed it, obviously you pull the backing off. Once you've cut the vase out, you pull the backing fabric off, and your stickiness is left on your fabric, as you know, and you put it in place. But when I ironed it on, I didn't iron it on all the way through. I ironed it basically up to there, so that this flappy bit of the vase was loose, in case I wanted to put things in underneath it. In this case, it was only that one little stem, that one. But I mean, I didn't know how I was going to design my picture. So by leaving that up, I could fit things underneath. And that's how I started. I just put my vase in place, cut out all these other elements. I think these leaves, I know there were 7. Those were 11. Just the 2 daisies. I made 2 centers for them. There's always a what if factor. I could have made just a daisy with a center. Much more interesting when it has that bit in. I could have made a daisy with a center, and I made that little star shape. So remember, as you go along and you get to know me, I often talk about the what if. What if I just add that little bit more? So remember, vary the sizes, vary the shapes, vary the fabrics you use, and all that remains to be done is that you then just decide where you want to place everything. And what I just placed everything down. Let's give that one a stem. And I fiddled on my ironing board. so that I could easily just take it away and put it into place and iron everything on. Let's do that. And I didn't actually put it all, I laid it all out first, but then I took some of the elements away, and I know that I ironed this little bit on first. The leaves went on last of all. I ironed this flower into place with its stem underneath, that flower with this going underneath, minus leaves, and I ironed that bit on. So when it was on my board, I used maybe like 2 pins in there, and all I did was, remember they were numbered so they were easy to place, and I put pins in them all the way around. Oops. There we go. And I started, say, perhaps here, no leaves, only these petals, the center, and the ones that had to, these stems that had to be in, no leaves on them. And I ironed. I started with that one, and I ironed it up to there, just so that it was holding. Pulled that one out. Next one, placed it, moved it until I, because remember this pin is anchoring it there, so I moved that around. Ironed it up to about there, and so I went all the way around and eventually ironed the whole lot down. Then I started fiddling with these 2 flowers and these stems that went underneath them. No little blue flowers yet, just stems, 2 flowers. Got them into place, same story. I didn't even bother to pin these, but I started ironing from a side and just checked that everything was in place as I went along. And then finally added the blue flowers and all the leaves and the centers. It was very easy to do. And like I say, today it's just about having a little bit of fun. I don't know about you. We're on lockdown, and I'm missing doing things with my friends. So let's just have fun together today. My final step was to stitch. Whoops. And I just switched my machine on. Embroidery needle. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, this initial piece of fabric was A3 size, which is basically 16.5 by 12 inches. 16.5 inches by 12 inches. I then just stitched with my machine embroidery needle, my normal threads. Change the color of your threads quite often. It all adds interest if you keep changing the color of your threads. And I just stitched it down. I stitched more than once on most things. Around the leaves, a lot of them I just went once but twice down the middle. But these ones I stitched around 3 times. If you're going to stitch, you might as well stitch. So I've gone around them 3 times. 3 times around there. And now, that is the way I decided to go today. The other option would be I could have selected a whole lot of colors that I wanted, fabrics I wanted to use, iron some, iron on, oh my goodness, I've gone blank. Some fusible weight on the back, and I could have really just used my scissors. This is obviously, we need leaves out of this, and I could have just done that. And cut and cut and cut and cut. And even my flowers. Just cut. I could have started with a center and cut some petals and just done a whole freeform thing and just placed them down as I was going along. If I did that, I think I would have also gone with just free stitching. machine dogs down and my little open-toed foot with my feed dogs down, and I would have just done free motion stitching and stitched it all into place, and perhaps then I would have just had a bunch of flowers instead. The other alternative is if you really feel you don't want to draw, but I encourage you, try. It's not as difficult as you think. I don't have a lot of these fabrics. I don't know why. I guess I don't use this kind of fabric a lot more normally, but I could have ironed that on to some fusible web and cut out leaves, and there I could have got little roses. I love these, aren't they sweet? I would have just cut out those bits. And this jersey piece of fabric got wonderful things in it. Look at that. Look at that. And some more. So if you really are not wanting to draw, that's the route you could go. Some butterflies. Look through your fabric stash. I'm sure you'll find fabrics that you can do this with. You obviously iron the fusible web on the back and cut out the shapes. In other words, you're fussy cutting. And that is where I've taken it so far. I'm going to do more to my little piece. This white square here bothers me. I don't know why, but it does. So I may well find a butterfly or something to go over it. I'm not sure. And I'm going to do hand stitching and perhaps some very simple embroidery stitches. I'm not quite sure what yet. Perhaps even a few beads. Perhaps not. I'll see as I go. Now, by next week, this will be done with a border on it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoy making your scent as much as I've enjoyed making mine. Just remember, next week I will be doing the woven border to put onto this piece. And if you'd like to see further videos, please like and subscribe, and you will get notification of them.